Dr. Robert Planqué is an associate professor of mathematical biology at VU University Amsterdam. We've invited Bob here to share his insights as an innovative co-founder and administrator of Xeno-Canto, a revolutionary platform dedicated to sharing wildlife sounds from across the globe. Since its launch in 2005, Xeno-Canto has evolved into the world's largest open access resource for bird sound recordings. The vibrant community has also expanded to include the sounds of other taxa, including insects, insects and bats, and fostering collaboration and discovery in the world of bioacoustics. Can't wait to hear more. Bob, do you want to take it away?
It's a pleasure, Stephanie. I should hire you to introduce me more. I think we all agree, all speakers, that you do an amazing job. So it's a pleasure to be here. And you did give me my affiliation at one of the universities in Amsterdam, although the work that I'm presenting here has really nothing to do with it. That is to say that I run this together with Willem Pierre, and we started this in about 20 years ago, and neither of us get paid for doing it. And in fact, no one gets paid for doing this. And so in terms of funding, I'll give you some hints why that works here, and why this may or may not work in your case. So for those that are not so familiar yet with this project, it is mostly known as a place for bird sounds. And we started this 20 years ago for the simple reason that there was very little out there. You could buy some DVDs and cassette tapes, but the more you have of those, the harder it is to find anything in them, because you have to searching through these things is just a nightmare. So we just thought we'd just make an upload button and start sharing, and that kind of got out of hand over the years. This is essentially what it looks like on the front page, and everyone gets an immediate acknowledgement. If you add something, then you're on the front page for at least for a bit. And from the very start, since both of us are scientists, we had these ideas that we wanted to be as open as we could. So we started using Creative Commons licenses, which I think was very new at the time. I mean, Creative Commons had been around for some time, but certainly not in this area. It hadn't been used very much. And we made these kinds of principles that everything is welcome as long as it's wild, that everyone can share a recording, or indeed voice their arguments or give some advice. There are many ways of different ways of contributing. And that also there are no validators, so everyone can question everything. And this draws in a certain crowd, and it certainly also keeps at bay another crowd that doesn't really like this. And I guess for this particular choice, I can vouch that there are practically never any arguments, because the people are always very respectful to one another. They're shared by the recordist, and that does mean that we as Xeno-Canto, we don't hold any license on the recordings ourselves. And if things are used by other people, then they have to get in contact with recordists to ask whether this is within the license or whether it isn't. And people can also share different licenses, but everything is open, in contrast, for instance, with the first talk that we heard on wild tracks. I think there's also a Dutch project which is more similar to the one like that Erin was talking about, which also has quite a different flavor from this. As you say, keeping people comfortable. So we started, of course, rather small, as we were also paying it from our own pockets. And so we started with MP3s. The idea of sharing WAVs was just not, we weren't very comfortable with that. And of course, we also thought that if we grow, but we don't grow as fast as the internet capacity grows, so new computers, new servers, then it can't become expensive. And that, by and large, has borne out. Because it's still relatively small in terms of size, maybe not so much in terms of impact, but certainly in terms of size, it's not very large. You can store raw files. They're also because you can share ultrasonic recordings, for instance. And we started other groups like the grasshoppers and crickets of the world, the bats of the world, and now also frogs and toads this year. And we hope before the end of the year, we start with land mammals. And as we already saw from Miles just now, marine mammals are also on the list, but they are a different kettle of fish altogether. Well, they're not fish, but you see what I mean. It's always been very open, and together with the help of Naturalis Biodiversity Center, I'm actually at there right now. We've opened to GBIF, and I think Xeno-Canto has about 2/3 or so, or a little bit less than that, of all the sounds that you can find on GBIF are currently from us, with the major remaining part is from iNaturalist. So that's nice. People use our data from via GBIF a lot, but we've also open sourced the code. You can run your local version if you're a bit savvy of Xeno-Canto and develop it if you like. And so this is, and I think there are quite a few people in the audience that are much more savvy in terms of programming skills than me. You're more than welcome to suggest things and develop things in a way that you can see fit. And then if we come to some good agreement, and the code can go into the system. The mission has been, and probably will be for some time, to collect, order, and classify sounds of nature. So to increase their accessibility, and of course to increase the knowledge that we have about them. And this you can take as wide as you can in terms of what these words mean. The recordings at the moment roughly come from these kinds of places. There are a couple of places that are just hard. Let's say Sudan, the Congo, and northern Siberia, definitely Greenland. But by and large, the world is covered quite well. And there are on the order of, well, close to 1 million, maybe that's a bit pushing it, but on the order of 800,000 to 900,000 recordings now. But it's only 14,000 hours, which I think is a lot less than quite a lot of the things that we've been talking about today. Because these are all snippets that have been cut to highlight particular species or annotate soundscapes and so on. We used to start at the Americas. That's why that chunk is biggest, because we liked it best, and we only started Europe relatively late. But now, of course, Europe is become bigger than the rest. For some reason, the US doesn't chip in enough. They go to other platforms. There are on the order of 10,000 or so recordists, and another 30,000, 40,000 people that are registered but haven't contributed recordings. But they, if you're a member, then you can use the website in a slightly more powerful way. And it is, apart from a platform of sharing things, it's also just a platform in which we bring people together to talk about sounds and animals, but also about recording equipment, giving people advice, maybe challenging recordings that are identified and people are not agreeing on them, and so on and so forth. We actually value the ones that are challenged. They're actually the more interesting ones, not the least interesting ones, for the simple reason that apparently there's disagreement about them, and so probably something to learn. And so we keep these discussions with all these recordings and hope to learn more from them in this way. This is another way of plotting how it's grown. It's only 3 terabytes, right? You can just buy one hard drive these days and fit it all on if you want it. And you see how it has kind of exploded since we've started sharing WAVs last year or 2, 3. These recordings are used in all kinds of places. There are on the order of 4,000 or 5,000 papers that reference Xeno-Canto in some way or another. So these are things from environmental studies to AI. I think practically, I don't really know because it's not my field, but I think most of the AI algorithms are trained on Xeno-Canto data, except of course for marine stuff, because we don't have marine data. So a lot of those papers are in that field, obviously. There are apps that are built with this. There are theater shows and BBC documentaries, all kinds of things, books that are use these recordings as well. And they go into all kinds of websites because we have this API that you can interface and extract stuff automatically and build your own websites with data in it. And there are 2 examples here at the bottom, one on Orthoptera and one on bats. And I'm sure there are lots of things that I don't know how they get used because they don't tell us. So that's essentially what we're about at the moment. And so I also wanted to give you a flavor of what's going to come. There clearly is just a lot of stuff missing. So we have only hundreds of species of grasshoppers, and there are on the order of 30,000 species listed, Not all of them make sounds, obviously, but there's plenty missing. So that's clear. Even the ones that we do have, there are many species, even in birds, by 3,000 or so species with only a few recordings, maybe 10 or less, or just from a few places. And so more is generally just better. But we've also come to realize that as this collection grows, we know less and less what we actually have. So the data is, as an AI person would say, it's weakly labeled. A recording usually has a foreground species, and if you hope, people have also given their background species, but we generally do not really know what's in there. We do not really know when this particular foreground species is singing, so we just have that it's a thrush maybe, but it doesn't say where it is singing. So that's weakly labeled, and that's one of the reasons why current AI approaches actually do not advance very much. We need much better data. And so that also means we need to know much better what we actually have. Something that's been on the list and that is slowly becoming doable is that we actually get automated and curated after that overviews of repertoires of different species or subspecies or geographic variation. So what call types do we have? How many different variations do we have on the 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 graded recordings that are in Xeno-Canto? Can we easily get an overview of that? We definitely have to increase the number of identified sound elements. And clearly what's on everyone's mind, including ours, is if you have seen something, can you find examples of this elsewhere in our database? So discovery of similar sounds, even if you do not really know what it is, right? Just finding these snippets is something that is becoming doable with modern technology. So that's where we want to go. We're currently starting a project and we're very late. I think other groups, as we've been hearing today, have been doing this for much longer. We want to actually start annotating these recordings and make them properly multi-labeled. With or without the use of machine learning, we're exploiting both of these avenues. Currently with the Bat Conservation Trust, we're doing a project, and another one is, or another group that's involved is the Bird Sounds Global Initiative that is actually annotating Xeno-Canto and other recordings. And Marcelo Araya is a Mexican who is well known for building the Warbler package, which is an R package which is built on top of Xeno-Canto to analyze do statistical analysis of recordings. He's also involved in this. Yeah, so currently we have all these recordings, they're not grouped, and we need to just improve the way that this is, that you can just browse through these recordings. And we hope to start doing this. And we've also now have a beta version of that actually introduces machine learning in Xeno-Canto. We had one running in 2013, so that's over a decade ago. It was extremely simple and before any of the CNNs that are currently running. But the guy who made it, a Brazilian, didn't want to open source his code that he had made. And so we had to part ways. So after 10 years now, we finally have a new version. So Aves Echo is something that is built here at Naturalis in the Arise project. And it actually builds on BirdNet, which is, I think, something that very many people know. I think it's one of the industry standard algorithms currently out there. We're going to start small because I think we're going to open Pandora's box with all these people that are on this platform. We have hundreds of people coming around every day. And so if we make too many things possible, then we get a lot of noise. So bear with us a little bit. But this is exciting for us at least. And I hope we will see some nice developments of this in the future. It's actually already been done by Google. So Tom Denton at Google, together with Sajjad Anwar at a company called Development Seed in India, made something like similarity search for Xeno-Canto, but not for us. I mean, they built it on us, but they didn't make it for us. They made it for a group in Australia that had a very large passive monitoring thing going with lots and lots of data, and they just wanted to say something like, if I found this, can you give me examples from Xeno-Canto that sound like it? But this is not, so it's been done, but it's not built into Xeno-Canto yet. We would like to do this. So that's it, basically. So this is where we are right now, and I hope the journey will continue for some time.
Xeno-Canto, like what a fascinating talk. I want to start. There were so many questions in the chat with you for you. So like if you can split your brain in two while other people are talking, I'd love for you to answer some of them. But a lot of them are setting up the bigger discussion. But the one I wanted to start with is like, so you're 20 years in to building this project. Like, well, I think we're almost 10 years in for Wild Labs, and like the number of lessons we've learned along the way, I can't imagine how many you've had as well. And like in this project, the Horizon Scan aims to anticipate innovations over the next 20 years. But looking back nearly 20 years ago when your project started, did you envisage it evolving into what it was, what it's become? And what surprises and unexpected developments have shaped the platform, and how do you think it might influence your vision for the next two decades?
Oh, that's quite the kitchen sink there.
I know, sorry. Pick one bit
no,
of
yeah,
it.
yeah,
like
yeah. No, it's so we just, I think so. We have seen over the last 20 years, we've seen quite a few initiatives that try to do something like it. And I think actually we're at the stage, because of the modern machine learning and all these very cheap recording devices, we're again in a phase in which people are trying to set up all kinds of new initiatives. And so I'm all for new initiatives, definitely. If people have good ideas, then they should by all means try and do and make them. But it does seem that it's one of the things that is very, very difficult in the field of these sound libraries is funding for libraries in general and funding for archives. And of course, I had no idea at the time that this was the case, but also when I talked to the people here at the museum, so I'm at the Naturalis Biodiversity Center, which is one of the top museums in the world, I think, on biodiversity, and or at least very well known. And they have great difficulty writing funding into their grants. And they've got this huge tower with 40 million objects or whatever it is. And they find it very difficult to just get structural funding to maintain them. And so the way that we've cut it, which is, I think, quite exceptional, but also really goes into certain, I mean, it works for us, but it basically only works for something like us, is that our operation in the end is extremely small, right? No one gets paid for any of it. And there is a bit of coding, and sometimes someone from Naturalis here actually does a bit of maintenance and so on. So of course he gets paid. But I think the whole project runs on basically something like 10,000 euros a year. That's it. Yeah, and that is 100 times what it used to be. So as long as you can, so of course there are all kinds of talks like, shouldn't we merge with a huge place like this, or like another case, like we've talked to the British Library, we've talked to the people in Berlin, and so on and so forth. Unless you're a place like Macaulay that just has, I think, lots of money, and great for them because they do great stuff, I think it would kill it. I think if we would do something like that, it would kill the project. Because then you would get into the problems that everyone else has, namely, how do you secure long-term funding? I don't have a good idea. And so we keep afloat because it just doesn't cost anything. No one cares about spending 10,000 euros on something a year, right? Considering the impact that it has. And so, but that is rather unique, I think. And definitely a big lesson. It was a big lesson for us, but it certainly wasn't one that we saw coming in advance. I mean, it was really just a pet project where I just had 100 recordings, and a friend of mine also had 100 recordings. We just got started. Yeah.
But so from three of the speakers, I think, I think it was three speakers mentioned the words like, we don't have finance, don't have funding, we just got started. And like, and I'm going to open it up to the rest of the speakers now as well. Like,